Hello, everyone. What's up? Can I get my music going? Oh boy, let's see here. What's up, Dr. Ham, guys? What's my little theme music is acting up today, which is really weird. Oh well. So we'll have to do it without theme music today. I hate that, but sometimes things happen. What's up, Jane? Hey guys, how's everyone doing? It's good to see everybody. Trying to see if I can get my theme music playing, but I guess it's telling me I can't today. I switched phones, so everything is kind of weird. But I'm so glad to have everyone. I know! Where's the music? It's not there today. Yeah, I'm having issues with my phone. I don't know what's going on, but everything's going to be fine. Ah! What's up, guys? It's good to see everyone. I am so grateful that you guys are a part of the show today. You guys always make me feel so good being here. And all that good things going on. Let's see here if I can possibly get it. Let's see. Alright. I'll try it this way. Okie dokie, folks. It's Women's History Month and we are celebrating Toni Morrison today. Thomas, what's going on, my friend? Yay, happy Sunday. Jane is a part of the show. I'm so happy. This is going to be an exciting show. Like I said, it's Women's History Month, and we're starting off with Toni Morrison. I have some greats coming this month, guys. I have Kathy Rigby. She's on musical theater great. And then some other stories that I'm going to share that I'm actually working out as we're doing it. So it's going to be a really, really good month of honoring and celebrating our women. I'm so grateful that I know so many powerful women in the world that I do live in. And I've been a beneficiary. I'm looking at one on here. What's up, Sheila? Sheila's my girl. All right, folks, so let's just get started. Welcome to Soapbox Sunday. I am Jermaine Taylor. It is Women's History Month, and Soapbox Sunday is celebrating their achievements and contributions in our world. Women, folks, are the decision makers. They're the rule breakers. They're the ultimate game changers. And today, we are honoring one of the most gifted storytellers of our time. I am blessed to say that I have lived and matured during her 88-year stay on this planet. I am talking about the great Dr. Toni Morrison. She changed and challenged how we approach, interpret, and learn from literature. Her work is often heavily centered around the plight of the black family and their survival. But embedded within those stories are life lessons for us all. So there's a lot to take from, diving into her literature. I have Dr. Mark Cunningham, adjunct professor of radio, television, and film at Austin Community College here in Austin, Texas, on board today. He is a student of her work. He knows her contributions, her work, her literature, her life. He has a strong command of Dr. Toni Morrison's point of view, and I'm so happy to have him on the show. So hold on, folks, while I get Dr. Mark Cunningham on the soapbox. Hold on. All right, he is joining on. Hey, Suzanne, it's good to see you. What's up, Sheila? All righty. Mark, are you there? What's up, Donna? Let's try this again. Make sure Mark is on.
I don't see you, Jermaine.
There we go. And send request. Oh, we see you both. Okay, cool.
I don't see you.
There you go. What's going on, man?
No, what's going on?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I have to tell you, I'm an associate professor. I'm not adjunct anymore.
You're not. You know what? I was diving into your some of your reviews and some of your stuff online, and it said adjunct.
I used to be adjunct a long time ago. I'm not anymore.
Okay. All right, so I guess I was looking at something that was sort of outdated. Sorry about that. Associate professor of radio and television. It's good to see you. Thank you so much for being on the soapbox today.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yes. So go ahead.
No, just some of my students are on here. My former students are on here.
Oh my God! Thank you guys. Thank you guys for supporting your former professor. He's a good friend of mine. He is my frat, and I love him
Yeah.
dearly, and he's going to give us the knowledge. So let's get into it, because there is a lot to really get into when you're even approaching anything remotely that Toni Morrison is connected to. Anything remotely. So let's just talk. On record, she talks a lot about her father in the early days of not even Jim Crow, when her father was coming up, and how the effects of racism and the wrestle with the white man that she saw her father go through affected her. When she began to write, do you think it was kind of therapy on part for her dad as well, and her in getting those stories out there? Because she wrote heavily a lot about race. So do you think she was possibly giving voice to his healing in her writings early on, or is that too much of a stretch?
Well, I mean, I would say to some degree, even indirectly or directly or indirectly, so that may be what she, that she certainly was doing that. She made it very clear, right, that her father did not like or trust white people.
Yeah.
He was very clear about that, and with good reason, right? He had not to. And so I do think that there are ways in her work, right, that she certainly, if not maybe exercising his own, kind of concerns or issues with white people, certainly kind of talking about in her work, right, how in the relationship that Black people have with white people and have had with white people over the years, just, since slavery and on or what have you, how that's affected us as a whole, or as as Black people.
Yeah.
I think that is just. I don't know. I don't know if she would say that she would have been kind of like directly, kind of like I say, exercising her own father's demons, so to speak.
Yeah.
For lack of a word, but just kind of addressing it as a whole, for sure. Talking about where that comes from, where that kind of thinking comes from.
She spent a great sum of her early on days before even writing, celebrating and uplifting other writers, giving voice to writers and giving voice to people in the movement that, were kind of building Huey Newton and Angela Davis. Was she kind of finding her way through that movement, her voice, or did she pretty much have a strong command as to how she would lift the people, and en route to the book, she would lift others before she got there? Like, how did those connections come about?
Well, Toni Morrison started out as an editor first.
Right.
At Random House, whatever. And so she used her position there to kind of champion Black writers, like you mentioned, Angela Davis, like Huey Newton, but also like Muhammad Ali, Tony Bambara. One of the kind of more seminal texts that she developed during her time as an editor at Random House was what's called the Black Book, which was a compilation of all of these kind of, artifacts and articles and so whatever else about the Black experience in America. And, Toni Morrison didn't publish her first novel until she was 39 years old.
Yeah.
So, she found herself, like, I think she took a short story class of some sort when she was developing The Bluest Eye, which will become her first novel, which will be published in 1969, 1970. And so when she, so I just think at the time, right, that she was really kind of focusing on the editing, right? And, she had got to college and was doing everything, trying to, she had gotten married. She had these, 2 young sons, and trying to find ways, right, to, take care of her family and whatever else. So I think, she always said about writing and that her children didn't need a writer, they needed a mother.
Yeah.
And so she, oftentimes would, wake up in the early morning hours or whatever else before she had to take care of her children. And then that's when she would do her writing.
Yeah.
But I think that when she was editing, I think that's what it was about.
Yeah.
I think that any ambition she may have had, to write or whatever else, I think she did that in her own time. That it was, I heard her say one time when someone asked her about a book she was working on, and she said, and asking her what it was about, and she said, well, right now it's just for me.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I read a quote that she said that there was a lack of writers that addressed who she was, a Black woman from the Midwest, with experience of the race, and she had never seen that in any kind of literature. So she wrote the story that she wanted to read. Ultimately, is what she said. when in celebrating and heralding all these other voices that she helped get promoted, were they having problems taking their publications other places, and she was the one to sort of get them out there, or was it just timing issue?
I think that was what she pursued. And
Okay, yeah.
use I mean it's a case of what we say, right? I mean, you use your platform to, champion others, right?
Yeah.
And that's what she did. She used that platform to make certain, right, that she did what she could to put Black voices out there.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, there's wonderful stories of her talking about Muhammad Ali, and how Muhammad Ali at first, because she was a woman, didn't take to her, and so she kind of had to approach him like a grandmother type in order for him to kind of this and kind of see, kind of open up to her, and then there's these wonderful stories that she has. But yeah, I think that was the point, right? I mean, for her to use that position to just give them a voice. I mean, these were people who were, very much so well known. She worked with, maybe not Toni K. Bambara at the time, but certainly, right, people like Angela Davis, who had already, kind of political presence in our culture, and then Muhammad Ali, of course, and not only having this kind of athletic presence, but also a political presence. So probably getting them published might not have been, too incredibly hard for them, maybe. But yeah, but Toni Morrison really wanted to work with them in that way. And then here's someone that is Black, that that is editing those voices and talking, working with those voices. And so, and it could have been an issue also too of maybe trusting her a little bit more. I don't know that for sure, but I can imagine where that might have been attractive to someone writing at that time, especially a Black person, right?
Yeah, exactly. You kind of want to work with you, and you feel comfortable when working with you, because you feel like they're going to take care of your voice, because there's a shared point of view some kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to allude to what you were talking about, her saying that, writing the kind of books that she wanted to read, which became a mantra for her, and I'll certainly see it quoted a lot now.
Yeah, exactly. I hear that a lot. In fact, when I was researching, that was one of her quotes that jumped out at me.
I mean, all these, I mean, I've seen the interview that she does with the woman about race and her books and all that.
Yeah.
Certain things that always make the rounds, whatever else. And it's.
Now let's talk about some of the themes and how she told her stories.
Okay.
Toni Morrison, she loved the whole mystic point of view. The whole magic of, the folklore, I call it, of storytelling. She talked about, and I believe it's in The Bluest Eye, how someone was barren, and they were this powder that they came up with, concoction, in order to make this person more desirable and things like that. I took to that especially because my grandmother, she came up during that time where, remedies were kind of like, out there, kind of like not old wives' tale, but they sort of relied on, I would say, unconventional medicine and things like that, and healing, and believing that they had these mystic powers. Is that something that she leaned into because she knew that our race was a lot more susceptible to the belief in that? Or was it just she was using this whole phantasmagorical point of view to tell a very real story?
Well, I mean, I think, some Toni Morrison writes about a particular time period. I think, we don't see, I would say, arguably contemporary writing from Toni Morrison, like things that take place in the 70s, whatever, to much later when Love comes, her novel Love comes, which is much later in her career. But, of course, Beloved takes place during, post-Civil War, and then the other novels take place like in the 30s or whatever else. So I think that there is an authenticity, right, when she talks about some of those remedies that you mentioned, or some of those potions, if you will, right, used during that time. I think that's just kind of indicative of the time period and the spirit of the authenticity of the time period. And you mentioned magic realism, and I think magic realism is most present in her novel Song of Solomon, where, I mean, literally at the end of the book, towards the end of the book anyway, whatever, the guy milkman sprouts wings and flies, which is very much so. Often hear Toni Morrison's name mentioned in parallel, if you will, with Gabriel Garcia Marquez, right? Who would, in novels like 100 Years of Solitude in particular, who worked, in that same magical realism kind of space, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, so I think, Toni Morrison is quite aware, like you mentioned, of the
Yeah.
folklore amongst Black people.
Yeah.
Certainly the way that, the storytelling, presence in Black culture, the way things work in Black culture. And I think all of those things find
Yeah.
themselves in her work for sure.
Well, it was definitely something that would keep me glued to her literature, because sometimes I would have a hard time getting through her language, because it was just, she wrote
Yeah.
in such a very interesting way, and I would have to go back and reread it again to make sure I got the intention.
Well, I mean,
But
I think that's what's important about Toni Morrison. I always tell this to people. I know a lot of people who just have difficulty writing, reading her work.
mm-hmm.
Sure. But I think you do have to adjust the way that you read.
You do, yes.
And I mean, Toni Morrison talks a lot about writing in the way, for example, things happen in one's life, right? But she said that you can be washing dishes at the sink,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you will remember something that happened 10 years ago,
Yeah.
right? And so she kind of writes, like I said, I think in that space where a character will be in the present and then remember something that happens 10 years ago, comes back to the present, remember something that happened 5 years ago, and then come back and remember something from that point that happened 5 years prior to that. And then the present that she calls rememory.
Yeah.
The memories have memories, so to speak.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, and I mean, and this becomes like chief to her, but it's certainly largely prevalent in Beloved, where she specifically kind of talks about.
No doubt. Yeah, and you kind of have to not really be linear and be dedicated to like
Yeah.
the story. You kind of have to know that you're going to go all over the place.
Because we're taught to read left to right, so to speak, right? And so people expect a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yeah.
Person works in this space that life does not happen like that, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I want to mention someone here talking about magic realism is all over. So I mean, that's true. But I'm just saying, magic it's in a lot of her work. But I'm just saying, I find it to be most prevalent. I'm saying in Solomon. It's not in other places. I want to make that clear. I'm not saying it's not other places.
No doubt. And thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
Another thing that she often wrote about was love, and not just love that we knew it, but she really took license and creative license on how one expresses their love. It's not always pretty.
No.
It can lead to death.
Yeah.
Was that the rub that a lot of her critics outside of her thinking had with her? The fact that someone would love someone so much, they'd be willing to kill them.
Well, yeah. I mean, of course, as you know, I mean, and I think you're specifically speaking here of Beloved, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
In that book, she talks a lot about thin love and thick love. Like all he says to Setha, the main character.
Well, even Eva, and I want to say in
Sula.
In Sula, they said that she killed her son.
She did. She killed him. Yeah, she did.
Okay.
But in terms of what I was just going to mention in terms of you talking about love in that regard, specifically in Beloved, she talks about thin love and thick love, and like thick. Setha says that thin love ain't no love at all, right? That love does have you in the mire like that. It is not pretty, right? And it can mean, right, the fact that Setha's story is based on the story of Margaret Garner, right, who a real life story of a slave who in fact killed her children rather than see them taken back into slavery, and then was tried not for murder but for the destruction of property. So but out of love, right, to do that for your children and not have them suffer in that space. Miss Eva in Sula, right, doesn't really. I mean, Miss Eva does a lot, out of love for her family, whatever, just sacrifice. Miss Eva doesn't, she kills her son, but then the other Sula watches her mother catch on fire in the yard. Yeah. It's just kind of, and the only reason she didn't, put the fire out, so to speak, right, is she wanted to see the fire. She wanted to see what it looked like when it burned, things like that. She did that. But Miss Eva, did a lot of things to sacrifice for her family. Like Miss Eva, putting her leg, the rumor is Miss Eva never really confirms this in the novel, but the rumor is that she stuck her leg under a train track so the train could run over it. To cut it, so she could get the insurance money for her family. So Yeah, and then that was the kind of point of contention everybody kind of brought up with Miss Eva. Just because you have to cut off your own leg, don't mean you got the right to kick everybody with the stump, which is what the
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, did Toni? She often wrote about how women took agency over their bodies and how they made their livings. Prostitution, I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, the bluest side.
Yeah, or those three girls, Marie, China, and I want to say, was it Poland? Those three that prostitutes that lived at the bottom.
Yeah, and the thing about the prostitutes in the bluest eye, but those are the ones that Piccola learned the most from. They took them
exactly.
They, it's akin to the drug dealer in the neighborhood that takes that takes the little boys in and kind of shows them the way to go or whatever else.
The drug dealer that helps build the community center.
Exactly. Right way or whatever, but the prostitutes, or the ones that saw Piccola for who she was and kind of took her in for that, and none of the rest of the stuff mattered. And so she was fascinated by them, you know. And really,
but she never discarded them, and they were always painted in lights that prostitution is just what they did,
right?
It wasn't the sum of who they were,
right?
And I found that to be very beautiful. That she never ever marginalized them and never painted them in a bad way in her books.
Yeah, I mean, that's the beautiful thing about Toni Morrison. Toni Morrison Holy, as I call her, like Baby Suggs. But Toni Morrison Holy, she doesn't pass judgment on her characters like that.
Yeah.
All of these people are who they are, and I mean, and there is this notion, idea that everybody in her books, at least I feel this way when I read them, that everybody in her books do what they have to do.
Yeah. Even the character that created the National Suicide Day.
Oh, yeah.
Just thinking about it, you're like, oh my God, how morbid is that?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, you know what? I'm going to decide when I'm checking up out of here, and you're not going to tell me, and it's going to be a day that we set aside and we celebrate it. Mm-hmm. So it's as if she takes these really, really offensive themes and sort of writes them in a way that they're like, okay, I don't get it, but I understand it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is. I mean, look, a lot of what she's discussing in these novels, right, is not pretty, right? Mm-hmm. And these people. I mean, I think about Piccola in the Blue Sky, and I think about some of the other things that kind of happen in these other stories, that she's telling these people that I mean, they life is for them is not the greatest, in terms of in terms of Black people, right? In that space, it's not the greatest. So yeah, it is this struggle, right, of kind of doing what one has to do, right?
Yeah, I mean, the plot of her books were the Black survival. Yeah,
but more importantly, I think what else I love about Toni Morrison's work too is that it is, as much as it possibly can be, Black people relating to each other. Yes. That's what's most important in her books. I love in Sula how when Sula and Nell are the best of friends, and Sula sleeps with Nell's husband. And Nell, Nell says, Nell gets upset with Sula, and Sula says, after everything we've been through, I thought a man would be low on the totem pole, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, it's just kind of putting that our friendship, right, is more important than some man. And it's just, that's so powerful, right? Yeah. And I know a lot of people, you read it, you're like, oh hell no, bullshit, but this notion, the idea that there is something bigger, right? Yeah. There's a bigger space and a bigger presence with that.
Song of Solomon was the first book that she said, and even, it's widely known that it had the greatest commercial appeal. Mm. And it was one of her first, I want to say her first book where the man was pretty much the central figure in the story.
Yeah.
Was there some correlation with that?
Well, I think she'd been at it for a while. Mm-hmm. I mean, look, let me tell you something. There are a lot of people who you ask who will say that they think Song of Solomon is her best novel. Mm-hmm. There are those of us who say, when you're talking about in terms of epic scope and there are some people who say Beloved, and then there are that faction of her readers that say Song of Solomon is the one.
I think that's more of a generational thing too, because a lot of people.
I don't know.
You don't think so?
I think it is. I don't think. I mean, there's not that much. I mean, there's only one book between Song of Solomon and Beloved, which is Tar Baby, which comes out in '81. So Song of Solomon comes out in 77. Bluest Eye comes out in 88, 87, 87. And so I don't think it's so much generational. I think those are the two works, right? I think that are the most probably, if you could say that, probably the most epic in scope in some ways of her work in terms of, and I would argue in some respects, right, that, you know, there's an accessibility that one has with Song of Solomon that a lot of people did not find with Beloved, and see certainly much of her subsequent work. I think the much of the work at a point in her career, I think Paradise is probably the toughest one to read. I think, you know, her early work, I think, is a little bit more accessible in that way. So that had to do with it as well. But I think, I mean, there's a striking story of family, right, in both of these novels, but certainly, right, the way Milkman is centered there, but then these strong female characters around it. In fact, you know, she even said about Pilot, who I love. Pilot is my favorite character.
Oh my God, I was going to ask you who your favorite character of all the novels were.
Pilot is my favorite character in Song of Solomon. And I love that she, you know, Toni Morrison even said that Pilot was talking so much when she was writing it to tell her to shut up. She said, the book is called Song of Solomon. It ain't about you. But I kept, you know, coming up and kept talking. But she's such a strong presence, right? And those are the parts of the novel that resonated with me most. I think about the part of the novel when she goes to her granddaughter's funeral and she walks into that church and she walking down the aisle and says, "Who's been messing with my baby?" and just wails like, it just knocks me out, man. Just completely out.
She often spoke about making sure the white gaze wasn't attached to her work. Dr. Cunningham, explain to us lay people what she meant by the white gaze.
Well, I think well, that's not the most important thing, right, that lingers over the novel, right? And a lot of times when this kind of that everything is kind of looked at through this kind of lens of whiteness, so to speak. Morrison says in her work, right, that she doesn't bother to explain things to white people in her work. I don't bother to explain things. She says, much like we've had to exist in this culture and kind of look things up and learn things too, they can do that as well. I don't have to explain that. She didn't feel like she had to explain specific things about the Black experience, which makes sense to me. I'm like, you know, because why would she bog her narrative down in this minutia, right, of kind of trying to explain every little thing? Oh, well, let me tell you what I mean when I say this comment. Let me tell you what I mean. You know, let me say
she'd never get a book done.
And it would get in the way, right? So she's like, why do I have to explain that? You know, I don't have to. And so I think that's some of the way that she doesn't do that heavy lifting for white readers. And in that regard, arguably, right, for none of her readers, right? That she I think someone mentioned before earlier that she said that, you know, writing is an exercise of the brain, and it is. You know, Toni Morrison, I always tell people, Toni Morrison is not the kind of writer where you say, I'm gonna knock out a chapter before I go to bed at night.
No.
It doesn't work that way.
No, honey. It's taking me a good week to get through a page sometimes. I'm not kidding you, because my first novel was Song of Solomon. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to finish this because I just couldn't get the intention. I understood what she was saying, but for me reading, it's more of the subtext, you know, and the subtext was often a long time coming for me. So it took me a long time. But then when I finally got it, it was a quicker read, but at the same time, I still didn't get it. I think I read Song of Solomon twice before I could fully say that I knew what it was about. It was just such a tough read for me.
I was something too about when you mentioned Song of Solomon, talking about like in terms of its place in her canon of work, so to speak, work. You know, that was the first, you know, one of her first one. It was a kind of a book of the month club selection. It was the first time that she declared herself or said that she was a writer.
She was a writer, exactly. She
said that the first one she did her income tax, and that was when she wrote that time writer. And felt comfortable doing that. And it's probably, you know, arguably probably her feeling probably the most assured as a writer, maybe her feeling that way.
Do you think it was the reception of the masses that confirmed it?
Yeah. No, I think, you know what? I don't think Toni Morrison, and I don't know her. I never, much to my regret, I never got to meet her. But she just never struck me as someone who cared a whole lot about how other people accepted things, because I really do believe that she wrote those things for herself. Like you said, those are the things that she wanted to read. Those are the perspectives of Blackness that she wanted to explore and imagine and think about. And the rest of us, I think we just benefited from that. We benefited from that.
Do you think Dr. Morrison was ever fully comfortable with the white man?
I don't know. I can't answer that. I really can't. That I can't answer. I really can't. I mean, I know that she. I mean, I know what her you know, what her life was like in reference to white people or whatever else. I certainly know what her father thought. But I think that, you know, Toni Morrison. I don't think it's a discomfort with white people so much as that Toni Morrison understood how the game is played. You know, and there were just ways that she just wasn't going to play that game, and she lived life on her own terms in that way. And
she was always challenged, Dr. Cunningham, even when she was interviewed. And I saw several interviews where Charlie Rose, I forget the British interviewer, they always ask her why she dwelt on race so much, and it annoyed her to the point where one time she called the woman out. She goes, "That is so entitled of you."
Yeah.
So that led me to that question.
Ask a white writer that.
Exactly.
You wouldn't ask them that.
Yeah. So, and yeah, I just wondered that because I felt like, go ahead.
But I was like, the gentleman said she had no use or time for white folks in her novels. I mean, yeah, but that's what we were saying. I mean, we talked about that she. I don't think it's a case of not having no use or time for them. I think it was a case that she just wasn't going to preference their experience. That's not what she was interested in.
Yeah.
She wasn't interested in that. Right. That's not the novel she wanted to read. We got enough of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have enough of those. And much as we have to sit down and work with those and work in the spaces of their work, the same needs to be done with the work of Black writers. I think that's what it was. Is there was no interest in telling that story. That's an oft-told story.
Speaking of stories, she had a long time reckoning with the fact of writing about slavery.
Yeah.
It took her a long time to even address it. It didn't come out to Beloved. She mentioned that, was it more of a painful thing, or there was just no connection, or had it been done so many times she didn't know what kind of point of view she could bring to it? What was the hesitation?
It's a difficult space to work in. I mean, you know, she said herself that when she was doing the research for Beloved, that she didn't go to any American museums or things like that. She went to museums in Brazil and whatever. She said in places like that, but in the Caribbean, what have you. She says because in America, the slave museums there were interested in pretty things like quilts and songs and stuff. But when she went to Brazil, that's when she saw the torture devices that were used, like the bit, right, that would sit in their tongue and latch it down, and as a punishment, right, where they couldn't even swallow, or the fact that they would, you know, the cages, whatever, that you would see them wear over their head because the slave owners didn't want them in the Caribbean spaces, right, where they planted sugarcane and didn't want them eating the sugarcane, so they put that over their heads and stuff, and literally to the point that it boiled their face. They pulled the cages off, that their skin would peel up, right? You know, so things like that. That's the stuff that she paid attention to and looked at, and really the kind of horrors of slavery, right? Because in America, right, you know, that slavery, you know, this American Holocaust, right, that we don't want to deal with in some way.
Yeah, that they want to edit it out of the history.
Yeah, right, or calling it, what do they call it? Volunteer slave servitude or something they call it.
Yeah, the slaves were very happy.
Yeah, you know, she wasn't interested in that. And so, you know, so she kind of went to those spaces and dealing with it. And so slavery becomes very, very difficult to write. And then when she was doing the work on the Black Book, it found that article, which is also in the Black Book, but she found the newspaper article about Margaret Garner's case, and she kept it.
Yeah.
To use later. And she said that she wasn't interested also too in basically retelling Margaret Garner's story. She wasn't interested in that. What she was interested more in was being able to kind of take that event and then create a story around it to be able to explore slavery that way, and then still to kind of use those elements, like, I mean, because Beloved is a ghost story.
It is. Yeah.
It is a ghost story, and there are elements of the way that we traditionally think of the ghost story. There's elements of horror in it. There's elements of this kind of, again, if we go back to this notion of magical realism and what have you, that those elements of that are in the story as well too. The mere fact that here's this ghost, right, that would come back, right, and as the age she would have been had she lived, but yet still, even though she physically matures, mentally, emotionally, she doesn't mature, which is why she throws tantrums, which is why like sweets. All the other stuff that she does.
Sweet.
Talks again, being able to kind of form her words and stuff like that. All in this attempt, right, to for Beloved to, really, and she's angry too. She's angry in the sense, right, too, that she was the one of all the children, even though Seth tried to kill them all. Right. But Beloved was the only one she managed to kill. So she was upset. She was angry about that. And so when she does return and Seth realizes that it's her, then Seth tries to make that up to her own, right? To her own. And so, so for Toni Morrison to be able to kind of create that story around it and not be kind of held, if you will, by trying to stick with the kind of, if you will, the trajectory of Margaret Garner's own story, frees her, right, to be able to write about slavery in the way that she wants, that she wanted to, which is difficult no matter what.
Were you okay with the movie?
I'm one of the ones that like the movie. I think the movie is very ambitious. I think some of the reason, and this is just my personal thought about it, some of the reason that the movie works so well for me is because I have read the novel so many times. I plug in those spaces. I could see where it would be difficult for some people. I do think it's the kind of movie, right, where again, much like you would think, like you were talking about with the novel, of not looking at it in this way where it is beginning, middle, end, right? It's not a story. It's not, right? It goes back and forth in time. And, I mean, the movie, just like Toni Morrison's work, it takes work. I mean, and you have to kind of stick with it a little bit, So, I think if there's any, one of the flaws that I think that the movie has is that I think I've told this to you, is that one of the flaws I think the movie has is that it doesn't show us how horrible slavery is. Right. I don't think slavery is made horrible enough in the film. I think that comes through
to justify why she would even have to kill the child. And that's the rub that a lot of people had, because they were like, wait a minute, was she deranged? Why did she do this? And then it sort of circled back, but it didn't dive into it and say as to why she felt like she needed to kill her child. And not having read the book, that's what I was sort of lost with.
Yeah, I mean, I think the movie does explain that. I think there are ways that it does, but what I'm saying is that for us to kind of see just how horrific slavery is, the movie doesn't tell us, it doesn't really give us, and and film is a visual medium, right? So, I think we needed to see how horrific it was. We needed more scenes of Sweet Home. Yeah. On the plantation.
Did we see just how bad set they had it in slavery? Because I don't remember that.
They don't show a lot of it.
Yeah, and that's the part that I felt like even if you made that of a connection, it would somewhat gives a little support as to why she would have killed the child.
Right. Well, I mean, but I think that's made clear to me. What I'm saying is just how horrible slavery is. No doubt. Horrific nature of slavery. That needs to come clear in the film, is what I'm saying. Yeah. No doubt. That way, it's not so much not understanding why I think I think it's clear why she does it. You're right. We get the weight of why it's necessary. Exactly. That's what I'm. The gravity.
There's a question that's coming. Which other Toni Morrison novel would you like to see made into a movie or possibly a miniseries? It's funny because I had that question that I pitched it to you, and he's asking it.
I would like to see Sula be made into a film, and I would like Dee Rees to direct it.
Really?
I think there was a time that Spike Lee wanted to do Sula.
Okay.
For a long while, he wanted, and it never came to pass. And as much as I love and appreciate and admire and adore Spike Lee, I'm glad he didn't do it. I would like to see, because I really do think that it is a movie that needs a woman's touch. I think that material needs a woman's touch. And I think that Dee Rees, there's an understanding she has about, aside from the fact, of course, that she is a woman, but there's a way that she portrays that on screen that I think is I think that would be exquisite for her to do Sula. I would love
to bring that to the forefront, even with Mary J. Blige limited ability to do, act.
Mudbound, yeah.
Exactly. I even saw what you just said in Mary J. Blige. It's like, she felt like she had to go take care of this white woman, sacrificing her own family. And I felt like a woman's point of view can communicate with another woman why that would be needed and the motivation she would need to do so. So I do get that.
I don't think a man can get the whole notion of a woman saying to another woman, as I mentioned, I thought a man would be low on the totem pole. Between it with everything we've been through, I don't think a man is going to get that. No, I don't want Ava to direct it.
No, I was getting ready to mute you. No, not Ava.
No,
we love Ava, but not Ava for
I think Dee Rees, I think there is a subtlety that Dee Rees has that would just be gorgeous for Sula. There's that being able to bring that out. But yeah, I would love to see. I'd love to see that happen. There was a time when I was strong, man, trying to be in the go in the film industry and
it ain't too late.
And I was at it when I graduated from film school the first time, and I went out there, whatever, and I had bought I wanted to turn The Bluest Eye into a film, and I had for it, and I wanted to do it in black and white, and I had all this stuff in mind that I wanted to do. And then
I just think the characters and the storylines and the themes and the sub-themes are so rich, it would work better as a mini-series or maybe as a series of movies. I don't know if you can, I feel like it would end up like Beloved, where it would be kind of wholly, dicey a little bit, and you would have needed to have read the book to order to get it. You know what I'm saying? So I wouldn't mind a mini-series.
Yeah, but and the thing about a mini-series is too, right, is that, it's just hit or miss, right?
Well, subscription TV is for that.
You're telling too much, right? It's such a fine line when you're dealing with a novel that is largely with novels, I should say, that are largely unfilmable.
Yeah, no doubt.
There are instances where it works. Like I think about John Irving's novel, The World According to Garp. That worked. But it's another one though that's just completely out of order. It's just
But there's always a rub with literary types and film types. They always feel like there's a big sacrifice when it comes to adapting something that a reader, a dedicated reader, and then they'll see the adapted form of it in the movie. There's always going to be a rub between those two audiences. So I don't know if there's going to ever be 100% satisfaction in that.
Oh, exactly. It's not relevant. But Toni Morrison's work, like I say, they're. I would largely say a lot of these books are unfilmable. There are things that she does in them. Just think about it. Some of the people that don't want to do the work. In terms of the novel itself, can you imagine them doing that kind of work, watching the movie? Like, man, please.
I am loving how you're helping me segue to my next question. Speaking of don't want to do the work, she challenged oftentimes in her lectures to writers to write outside of yourself.
Yeah.
She wasn't interested in hearing about your point of view, your story. Yeah. She wanted to hear more of the fictional world that you can create based on where you.
Well, yeah. More specifically, she made that comment when she was. I love this conversation she has with Jazz at the New York Public Library, and she makes the comment. My friend Terry is on here, so she knows my favorite thing is when Toni Morrison talks about she likes the term relief as opposed to welfare. She said, because she said welfare is just like, but she said, but relief implies like just for a little while. But anywho, in that same interview, she said, don't write what you know, because you don't know nothing. Yeah, you don't know nothing. She says,
Yeah.
I don't want to know about your lover. I don't want to know
Yeah.
about your grandmother. She said, write about a young Mexican woman who doesn't speak English that's working in a restaurant in America and she's down on her luck. You know,
Yeah.
she said, write about something like that, you know.
Because it forces you to get outside of
Yeah.
yourself and do the research and get into their brain.
And she said that, you know, her students step up to the plate and they do wonderfully with it. You know, it's what she said at the time her students stepped up to the plate. So I would probably have had to drop that class. I couldn't have written.
When she mentioned that, I saw that interview, it sort of struck a chord with me because in doing this show, Dr. Cunningham, I have tackled on a number of subjects that I just knew nothing about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it was scary. And I was like, well, let me just dive into it and hope that I can meet my guests somewhere at their level.
Mm-hmm.
But it took me getting outside of my whole comfort zone of talking about issues that I'm comfortable with to make this even more exciting and to keep it going.
Uh-huh.
So I even applied that philosophy to what I'm doing. So I found it to be very rich how she took care of her students and the writers that she was nourishing in her classrooms and things like that. Have you ever met any of her students, by the way?
I have not met any of her students. I'd be so jealous. No, I'm not her students. Let me tell you something. I have a quote from Beloved tattooed on my back. I love Toni Morrison. I met Toni Morrison. I count Toni Morrison as one of the 4 things that changed my life when I was 21. And
Wow.
it was reading Song of Solomon it was the first Toni Morrison novel I read. I worked at a bookstore. I was working 2 jobs at the time. I'll never forget. I had a bad car. I had sat out a year of college before I came to UT. And I was working at a bookstore that's since gone out of business. And there was a sister I worked with, Kathy, I think her name was, black lady. And she sat behind the counter and we were talking about books. And she looked at me and she says, Mark, she goes, have you ever read any Toni Morrison novels? And I said, no, I never read. And so they would let us take books home and read them, whatever. And she said, go get Song of Solomon and read that. And just... it changed me, man. And then I remember I was in the Marine Corps, and I would go to my 2-week reserve meetings or whatever else, and I took Louis Dye with me because we had a lot of downtime and we could read. And so me and Sergeant Carroll, another brother, there reading the Bluest Eye at the same time. Toni Morrison was out his wheelhouse, right? So I would read it, and then when I had to go to guard duty or whatever else I had to go to, he would read it, and we go and read it at the same time, and he was blown away. I mean, so it was just. Yeah, I mean, she just, you know, completely, you know, changed me.
Sure.
It changed me. And so, yeah, the quote on my back is from Beloved when she said, my own best thing was when Setha tells Paul D that when Beloved goes away, that she's gone and she was my best thing. And Paul D says, no, Setha, you your best thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's it. Do you think she would have made a great actress if she had tried to pursue acting?
Toni Morrison can do whatever she wants to do. Morrison was brilliant at everything. So I don't doubt Toni Morrison would have been a brilliant actress if that's what she wanted to do. But you know, there was a way, right? I think that we saw that performance in the way that she talked. Like I love, like I told you that interview that New York Times at the New York Library that she did, and I just when she gives interviews and stuff, and I think her documentary that just and just the way that she tells story, I could listen to her talk.
It's just the way that she takes on writing a book for me is so method. And I'm thinking, oh my God, an actor would just eat this up because it's like she embodies herself in this world that's unlike anything who she is naturally. And she inhabits all the elements to the finest minute of detail. And that's what we method actors do. And I just find, you know, having that innate already, it would translate well into the theatrical stage.
Yeah, I mean, I think the material itself that she writes is certainly rich, more than enough to have that happen. Yeah. But, you know, I mean, I mean, I don't know. I think Toni Morrison was a very private person, too. Like, you know, Toni Morrison married, she married Harold Morrison, who was a Jamaican guy, who's a Jamaican artist. And then she divorced him. And
was that her only marriage? That was her only marriage.
Her only marriage, yeah. She only one time, and she never talked about him.
No, she didn't.
She
Not
didn't
at all.
talk about him. I have tried. Ain't nothing to find out. I haven't even seen a picture of that man. I mean, you know, she just did not. So I think it's so funny that you were talking about so different from who she is. It's so clear, like so clear in a lot of ways that we really don't know and never really kind of knew maybe in some ways who Toni Morrison was, outside of her novels or whatever else. And even as she got older, there were like certain things that she didn't divulge. But I did remember her talking about when her son passed that she kind of she talked about that. And
right. Did it change the way she wrote? Because there was one other book that she finished. She was writing the book as he was
Home, which is Home is dedicated to him.
Okay.
Slade. Yeah.
Was there a shift in the book because he died while she was writing it?
Well, she only wrote one more novel after that before she died.
Okay.
Right, which was God Help the Child. She wrote that. And she, I don't know if I don't think it was a shift in her writing. I know that I know she had said something to the effect that she had to stop. Writing,
and he told her, I think she said it was, I don't know if he revisited her in a dream or something, but it was because of him. She kept going because that's what he would have wanted.
Yeah, she did have to remember that. But I love, I just recently lost my mother last year.
Yes.
And and the mother and the son, it's not the same, but I think that same level of hurt that you have. And I remember her saying, she was talking about people saying to her about getting over her son's death, and she made the comment that I don't think I'll ever get over that. It said everything. It said everything that I was feeling at the time about my mom. Like, I don't think I'm gonna ever get over this. I think I'm gonna learn to live with this, but I'm to get over this. Never.
Yeah.
And so, just the kind of the weight of that, and carrying that around with me, and that's always going to be me. And so, if I'm thinking about Toni Morrison this way, like, I always wondered, like, oh, will she ever write a book? Because I don't know, I didn't expect her to die. I didn't. I mean,
I remember when she passed, I sent you a text wondering.
Yeah, you did. It sounds silly for me to say that because we all crossed that way, but I just didn't. Maybe I just didn't expect her to die then when she did. But she, and I found myself asking myself, would she write about her son's death or whatever? And I don't think she would have.
Yeah.
I don't think she would have written about her son's death. I think, again, because if she's saying, because you don't know nothing.
Yeah.
You don't know nothing.
Yeah.
And I guess it's the case that, right, if you knew something, you'd be living a better life than what you're living. So
no doubt.
You don't know nothing. So I think she would have kept that out of her work.
Dr. Cunningham, you have started off my Women's History Month celebration so beautifully.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, man.
I tell you, I wanted to start off with a bang and someone who was heavy and worth mentioning and worth launching, and I needed someone who would just know all about it, and I immediately thought of you. Well, actually, I thought of someone else, and then when we were talking, I was like, wait a minute, this is a better idea. So thank you for steering me in this direction. I really appreciate this.
You're welcome, sir. I'm always happy to talk about Toni Morrison. I mean, I think it's, I think it's also one of those things too, is that, we hear a lot of discussion about, and I think we know a lot of times what Toni Morrison means to women and Black women.
Yeah.
That's so important. But, I always like to say that what she means to us is men, because she totally, literally, she changed my life, man. Literally, she changed.
She just never surrendered her point of view. And that's the part that I like, because as an artist, sometimes you move with what's most popular.
Right.
You do. And she never did to me. And even when she would have, I got the most in researching this from her interviews and not necessarily from her work, because it was in her, and I got to say it's because we're getting ready to run out of time. You saw the passionate voice that was embedded in the novels that we had already read when I heard talking to these different people. And it was like, no, I'm not going to compromise. I don't care that you didn't get it. You will get it eventually if you surrender to it. But it's out there. It might not be for your audience or your contingency, but it's out there.
Yeah.
And it was as if, as they would challenge her, she would challenge them to surrender to a different point of view every now and then.
Yeah, you have to
come around to getting it, because it wasn't like she was writing about something that was so foreign. It was the American experience.
Oh, absolutely. Toni, American as anything.
Yes, exactly.
They just
And
about
I
Black
think
American.
that was the rub that she had with a lot of people. This isn't your American experience.
Right.
This is mine.
And the thing is not only that, right, too, your experience is not the American experience. It's
Exactly.
American experience. And this is an American experience, too.
Yes.
That's what, damn it, you know. But look, I have to tell you, I put you can see my Toni Morrison collection up here. So
they're all on display for the
Oprah did here. That's all the ones in hardback, the Toni Morrisons in hardback. There's the paperback right here. And I have a Beloved in French. So
get out of here.
Yeah.
I didn't know you spoke French and read French. Oh my God.
Well, I can read it. I can't speak it.
Dr. Cunningham, thank you so much for hopping on the soapbox.
You're welcome, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, then you have a good day and feel better, dude.
I will, man. I had that second COVID shot, so it kind of drove me.
I know. Mine is Tuesday, so hopefully I won't have any, drawbacks from it. But if I do, at least I'm fully vaccinated.
Yes, sir. That's how I feel.
All right. You have a good one. Thank you so much.
Take care, man.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Folks, that was Dr. Mark Cunningham of Austin Community College, Associate Professor of Radio, Television, and Film. Thank you guys for jumping on the soapbox today. And next week, we are going to continue our celebration of women's history. Bye-bye.